All right. Assalamu alaikum. Hello. Thank you for joining us today. And that's for you, Basma, for today. Thank you for joining us. It says one of the last weekends we have in summer break, and I know we are all dreading the first day of school. Hopefully, this and the next few webinar series that we have should help us transition into back into teaching a little more with ease. So the first thing I'd love to do is to kind of help us learn this new tech that we can use in our classrooms. If you could go to your app store, whether it's in the Apple Play Store or the Android one, and you can download something called a Goosechase. Have you used Goosechase in your teaching context? Could do a thumbs up if you did, or maybe not. So it looks sort of like this, and I'm going to show it to you on my phone. Hopefully everyone can see it. It's like a small, I don't know if you can see it. It's like a small goose picture. Can't see it because of my background. But anyways, it's a small goose picture. It's like orange in color, and there's a picture of it on our presentation as well. If you could download it, then we can go to the next step. Once you've downloaded, you can log in as a guest and then put in the joining code. Okay, good, Basma. So I'm going to show you something I got really excited about as well. So if you have it downloaded, you can just chat in and then I can take you to the next part. So once you've downloaded, you would see a screen that's talking about mission, right? And you should see something called the PulseED mission. All right. So what we're going to do is, have you got it downloaded? If you
I've
could just let me
downloaded,
know. Sorry?
yeah, I've downloaded it, but it's saying your experience is almost ready.
Yeah. So basically, I haven't started the experiences. I haven't
Oh,
started the
okay.
timer yet.
All
So
right,
you're
cool.
trying. Okay. We'll wait a bit. We'll wait a bit so that you're on board. Then we can get it started. It should say Goosechase and should look like a picture that's on the top of my screen here, like a small goose with an orange background. And if you could confirm if you have it downloaded and if you have the code, I'll show you the code again. Yeah, okay. How about you, Basma? No, not yet. Okay. We're lucky today. We have Basma. I can't find it. You can share the app link. Yeah, okay, fine, no problem. I'll share the app link, but just to let you know, what Goosechase does is it creates these checking points. Today we're going to talk about CFUs and checking points. And so it creates these checking points for us to be able to see how students are doing, right? So let's go back to Goosechase and see how Sister Lina will be able to pass through our riddle. So I'm going to stop this share and I'm going to go to Goosechase again. And this Goosechase app is easily downloadable on the iPad, on your any sort of device that you have. And on the teacher's end, and I'll show you how to create the experience. Once you've created the experience and you've created the mission, you can literally set what time you want the students to spend on this mission. You could have full autonomy on when it goes live. So when I say yes live, Lena should be able to see that experience on her phone. And also, on top of that, you have the ability to end the experience beforehand. If you've seen most of the students have responded and they've all gone through, you can end the experience and then move on to the rest of your session. And once the participants are in, you can set them up as teams. So it's me. So you can see Lena, she's entered, and I have entered as hello. And this is my own personal passcode. It is similar to quizzes, but what happens with Goosechase is that you have created several missions. And for us today, the mission was PulseED mission and where have you nested? And they have to go through the series of missions based on how you align them with your lessons. And these could be your checking points throughout your lesson. And this could be live you could set it as live for the rest of your lesson. So it's not necessary that you do it at the end of the lesson, or you could just do it in the beginning of the lesson, set your time. So for example, my lessons are 50 minutes long. So I'm going to reset and I'm going to say, oh, you know what? I want these missions to be live for the next 50 minutes because I can't go back to my computer and have go resubmit or publish the experiences. I'll just publish it once, and the students know that unless they go through mission by mission, and they could do it in their own time. So they finish the task, they want to do a mission, and then they see, oh, I've got 400 points. Then you go back to your task, and then the next mission gets published after some time. So this is a very good way of setting your checking points throughout your lesson.
And actually,
Um,
I just want to say that,
yeah.
especially with the schools now starting and probably going to be having some new students, so it could also serve as a great ice breaker.
A very good icebreaker. And you could like duplicate missions. You could set missions that are for different lessons within a calendar. That requires a little bit of more time for us to explore this, but this is one tool I highly recommend. On the free plan, it has so many tools available on the free plan right now, and I hope they don't monetize those. So you could really use it for your starting orientation week of your school week. So let's get back to our PowerPoint now. I hope that is helpful. So what are we going to do for our today's PD session? The today's PD session is all about the questions, the type of questions we ask, and how we can really be those artists who question in a way where we get intended outcomes from our learners. We're also going to talk about how to set up these CFUs, our checking for understanding, and to spot some real gaps and to be able to identify, not only identify them, but also to close those gaps. Of course, no PD is fulfilled unless we have strategies and resources. And that's one of the main aims of PulseEd webinars is to give those usable strategies and usable resources that you could take literally your classroom, implement it no matter what subject area you're teaching. Moving on to our principle three. This is Lena.
Okay, thank you so much, Rehana. So I'll be talking about principle three, which is all about asking questions. So the most successful and effective teachers, they spend more than half the class time lecturing, demonstrating, and asking questions. We really do want to move away from lecturing, though. So I'm going to say demonstrating and asking questions. The questions will allow the teacher to determine how well the material is learned. Us as teachers, we know what we're teaching. We know that the lesson, the message that we're trying to send out. But by asking questions, I'm also checking if the message sent is actually the message received. So we can do that by asking a large number of questions, asking students to explain what they've learned. I check the responses of all the students, and that gives me feedback and a space to clear up any misconceptions. I'll just move on to some strategies that we can use. And again, anything to do with Rosenshine is really backed up by research. So all of these strategies that you can see here are research backed and they are effective strategies. You already know some of them. Most of them, I'm sure, if not all of them, you're using them in your classrooms every day. However, some of these strategies really should be routine, such as cold calling. And even inspectors or anyone that is coming to your class, they're looking for these strategies. Is cold calling a part of your routine, or is it something that you're doing just now for show? If it's routine, students will show this. The students will be used to cold calling, where you're not really looking for hands up, and the teacher asks questions and then selects the students to respond based on their knowledge of the class. So, for example, I will as well gauge my questions according to the students. So if I know, for example, I've got low ability student, I wouldn't really be asking them a deep critical thinking question. I will cold call according to the level of my students. So that's for cold calling. Another one is no opt out. So a lot of our students are, they can be quite lazy. They can easily give us an answer of, I don't know. So when we have these kind of responses, we can move to another student or just simply give the correct answer. Sometimes teachers are reluctant to just give the correct answer. But depending on the situation and depending on the concept, sometimes it's important. It's important to just give the correct answer to the student. However, if you don't want to give the correct answer, we can ask, and then I go to another student, and then go back to all of the students who made errors to give them a chance to say the correct answer. And if we do this in a routine way, students will soon learn that there's no value in just saying, I don't know, as a defense in the hope of being left alone. Okay, another strategy can be say it again, but better. Okay. So in this one, it's really normal for students' first response to be half-hearted. It could also be half-formed. It, it maybe some part of it is correct, but there's a misconception that you need to clear up as a teacher. So here we can say, all right, thanks, that's great. Now let's say it again better. Try again, but make sure you add in X and link it to idea Y. Okay? This will allow them an immediate opportunity to give an improved response. Okay? Another questioning strategy is think, pair, share. This one has been covered actually by Ms. Basma in a previous educator spotlight. And I'm sure, again, a lot of us teachers are using it. It's just important to have this as a time queued task. Sometimes it's important to have a whole class response. So, for example, just depending on the question, we can use simple whiteboards, ask them a question and then ask them to show me the answer. Or if you want to use technology, we can use things like Mentimeter or Padlet to give us the answer. Another questioning strategy is probing. So, with this one, it's a form of guided practice and it encourages deeper thinking. Okay, so you can ask for one student between 3 to 5 questions before moving on. Okay, and this really allows us to check for misconceptions. It adds extra challenge, or if the student is not getting the concept, you can use it to scaffold. Okay, and these strategies will really engineer success. Okay, I've just listed some of these strategies with steps for the strategies that we just spoke about. And if we go to the next slide, then you can just see how all of these strategies they can actually connect together. Rosenshine actually connects well with Teach Like a Champion. and the walkthrough series. So all of these strategies, they come together in Rosenshine's principles. And that's it for asking questions. That's an overall overview of principle number three. Okay, thank you, Ms. Rehana. I'll leave it now. I'll take it over to Ms. Rehana to speak about checking for understanding and connecting the principles.
Okay, so we are now going to talk about how the cognitive science theory helps us to link Rosenshine's principle to what students can and cannot do, and when should we really think as teachers to take a step back. So, for example, when you're doing checking for understanding, this directly links to the CLT, which we call cognitive load theory. We want to know that students are at a point where they're learning comfortably. They are being challenged, but they're not being challenged to a point where their working memory has been saturated and they aren't able to progress due to internal intrinsic factors like frustration, emotional anxiety. So these things can really hinder our effectiveness in the classroom, which we call as the cognitive load theory. Now, to look at this, now in the CLT itself, there are principles. So we are talking about principle to principle. Which principle are we talking about? We're talking about students understanding being checked at timed and intended intervals. To be able to do this, we have to understand that there are certain cognitive principles that should align when we are designing this in within our classroom. One thing we should be aware of is there is a limit to working memory, and this limit to working memory is different for different ability students. So that's how we classify our students. Some in our classrooms have lower abilities and others have higher and more gifted abilities, and these abilities means they have a better grasp of or better ability with their working memory, and are able to utilize their working memory at a broader percentage than compared to those who have a lower ability. That's how the differentiation and personalization of learning really came into place. So the first thing is the scaffolds and the guides that we do. To be able to do CFU properly, we should have these guides. We should have these scaffolding. I know when we are checking for understanding, we do not want to give any kind of leeway where students can get an answer from sources, but rather just from their own ability. But that in itself depends on the content or the context of your task and your classroom. So having scaffolds while you're doing CFU isn't actually a negative part of your lesson. It's actually appreciated by inspectors. And we're talking about from an inspector's point of view. We also want to understand that it's when you are giving the students the the ability to check for their understanding, there is going to be there's going to be requirements for exemplars being given to the students, and also example questions being given to the students. And we're going to talk about that when we're going to talk about modeling and how those are also part of this building the students' understanding. And that is something that takes time. And we talked about the time factor when we talked about review and retrieval, that time is a important but a very rare resource in our teacher's kit. At the same time, we also want to talk about removing repetitions. When you're checking for understanding, repeated questions, for example, the state question, which is a favorite for teachers because the one marker easily made, easily modeled, but again, something that can lead to redundancy and repetition of learned examples or learned answers, and that repetition normally isn't very helpful for students. It does not improve or it does not expand their knowledge bank. So you can have repetitions, but at a very judged way, in a way that you know it adds value. Then we have the most important thing, I think, goal-free effect. I think the idea of always having some kind of an objective at the end limits our students in their growing in knowledge, growing in learning and skills. I think deeper exploration is necessary, especially because we have so many ed tech facilities. If we allow a goal-free effect in our classroom where students can go deeper into a content or deeper into their skills, maybe outside even the curriculum limitations, and just exploring their own abilities and strengths, that could really encourage a classroom that improves in innovation or encourages innovation and encourages deeper thinking and depth of knowledge. In case of inspection, if this is a tradition within the classroom and it's a routine within the classroom where the inspector is able to see these variations in your CFUs, it really lets them know that you have your CLT in check when you are designing your lessons. So again, we know our inspections are always there in the back of our mind when we teach. Either it's a walk-in or it's planned or it's announced. Formative assessments within the lesson helps the inspector to see how the progress has been checked for the students individually or in a group, but most preferably individually. And when we have those in our lesson plans, not only beautifully printed out, but also in within the lesson itself, it gives the indication to the inspector that yes, there is a rigor in the classroom because there are intended assessment and CFU points where the students are being checked and they are being monitored for how they're progressing within the lesson. So these are important, whether whichever framework you come from or whichever framework you're being judged on. It is a very important part of our inspection and teacher ability checks. So, what are the indications? What does research say about the effectiveness of principle number 6? As you all know, checking for understanding is wonderful for us as teachers to know how well our lessons went. But for the students, how does it look from a student's point of view? Is that when you are just doing 10 to 15 minutes of checks within your lessons where the students are demonstrating their understanding, they have a 17% higher score rates in their actual summative testing. So these are formatives leading up to summative improvements. And this is what the Principle 6 is all about. It's all about increasing students' retention, improving their long-term memory, and you will see that within your assessments. It also, when you look at even different contexts, for example, health and PE education, which are heavily based on improvement of skill rather than just knowledge, they've seen 33% improvement that, a javelin throw requires you to learn how to actually know the mechanics of a throw. And because you have done these checks in your lessons, there was a 33% improvement in how the students retained the information and improved on how the skill they have used to throw a javelin, let's say. So that's looking at different context-wise. What about in higher education? Even in higher education, all of these principles, it's not only something that is limited within a school environment or a K-12 environment, it is something that goes broader even in higher education where they do targeted questioning that has shown that 68 to 87% improvement in the way the responses are generated by the students. And also the active participation of the students enabled within the same lesson because of these regular checkpoints that ensured and assured the students that they do have the information that they can participate in the class with. What about the effectiveness scale for Hattie? When we look at the ES scale, we see that because Hattie plays in very well with the Rosenshine's principle, most of his meta-analysis of these principles shows a very high rating when it comes to how it affects how the impact is on the student and the positive impact it has, especially significantly improving and boosting the achievements of the students within the lesson and even beyond the lesson. And these really do help us understand later on what kind of strategies we should use in case for us when we are inspector, when we are not inspector, to get our students trained. And the most important thing with CFUs is the training you implement on the students. When I know that inspection is coming and on the onset of my academic year, that's the first thing that's on my to-do agenda with my students is that when we are doing our classroom agreement and we have our understanding within the classroom, we have decided that there are going to be learning checks within the classroom, and you have to not only adapt to it, but also expect it in every lesson. And when those expectations have been set, whether you have an inspector that is surprise inspection or you have a formal inspection or intended one, uh, the students fluidly move in from one task to another. They move in very quickly from one check to another. So it's all about training the students. One of my favorite for Principle 6, which is the CFU, is hinge questions. I really like giving hooks questions that are real life application questions. And inspectors um, love to see these real life application questions brought into the classroom where students are actually have to relate contextual and concepts that they have learned within the classroom to real life application. And you could just give the hinge question in the beginning of the lesson and do it as an exit ticket at the end of the lesson. Or you could break it down and then bring it in between the lessons. But these hinge questions are wonderful, especially if they're real life based. You could set it as short questions or multiple choice questions. Um, I know that most of us know what is whiteboard cold calling, but live work sampling is something that I love to do in my classroom. It's basically when you have given task, and like Goosechase, I have given a task, I've given a mission, and I can see on the leadership board that, oh, my some of my students are not really doing so well. Their points aren't really so up. So I go to them physically and I check up on them and I say, I want to see a sample of your work. I want to see what you have sent out. Even though I'm aware of it, I would want them to discuss it with me. So I would be aware of what kind of teaching I should modify for them, what kind of resource I should be able to give them. So any kind of misconceptions are located from early on. And this is adaptive teaching. Adaptive teaching is not that I go through a lot of paperwork, have these paperworks in a file, and then make sure that the inspector has it. No, it's basically what do we do in our classroom when we go to our students and we sample their work and then we modify whatever resources we have given to them to be able to reach the intended outcome. We also, the other thing that I love using is peer instruction. Sister Lena said that sometimes just opting out isn't an option, and there will be students who wouldn't opt out, who would have the actual answer, and those are your peer instructors. Those are the instructors that you could utilize within the classroom and do a student-led learning environment. They're going to different pockets of identified students and they are helping their peers through the task, through their misconceptions, and that really creates not only cohesion within the classroom, but also it creates autonomy within your students where they know that they can drive their own learning without the requirement of a teacher intervention. There are signal checks where you can do like the green card, red card, but then something that has data is what is a sure win with an inspection. So anything that has data, that has tangible student reflected samples, something that comes on the board and it has like nice pie charts and nice names up and they're showing student progress. The CFUs are all there. This is a sure win within a school, in a classroom learning environment. Um, and that in itself not only shows the inspector that you have intention of knowing students' progress, but also you have the intention of using it in your later classroom to know how to bridge gaps and how to extend strengths of students. Um, and that's basically it for today from us. We have a handout today that I think Cecilina would want to go through. Sorry, we can't.
Thank you, Rehana. Can you just go to my cheat sheet if you don't
Yes.
mind?
Yes, we love these cheat sheets. Those are what we crave. Okay, let me just start sharing again on the cheat sheet. Okay, got it.
Okay, so these are just, I mean, we all know how to ask questions, but this is just a cheat sheet for asking better questions and also asking questions in a better way. So these are just some higher order thinking questions. Sometimes we're always, guided and set, and they tell us, make sure that you're asking critical thinking questions. Um, Now, critical thinking, we want to see it in the classroom, but sometimes we just need somebody to point the finger, and just tell us explicitly how to do it. So even questions should be planned. So this is just a quick cheat sheet with all of the questions, or just some prompts that we can use. Um, you know, um, Again, we're just moving from, the recall and just basic knowledge questions, probing the students. What do you think? Why do you think that happened? How do you know? So really, we want them to narrate their thinking process. Yeah, and if you just go down, Ms. Rehana, just it gives us probing questions, examples of prompting questions, strategic questions. Again, we can start with simple questions and then just move up, in challenge. Um, Sometimes we can give them the answer and then just ask them, why do you think this answer is correct? So, for example, instead of saying, is seven a prime number? We can say, why is seven a prime number? So students know the answer, but they even have to now think about the process and narrate their thinking. So it goes, to, again, it's going from that working memory and hopefully transferring into the long-term memory. And that will also, help with deeper learning. Yeah. So again, this is another strategy, giving you the original question and then thinking about how I can make that question better. So this is just, some questions that you can use in your planning, to help you to apply principle number 3. And I hope that's useful.
If you have any questions at this point, we would love to hear it. Just one more thing I would like to add. I like critical thinking based questions. Yeah, I love those as well. And also one more thing. I know we're going to talk about it a bit more, but when we talk about cognitive load theory, there are basically three main areas we have to talk about, which is intrinsic, extrinsic, and germane. Um, Thank you so much, Basma. When we are planning, we need to keep all of these three in mind, where intrinsic is basically the content itself. Is the content age appropriate? Is it too demanding for your classroom? And this is again where the CFU comes in handy. Your questioning technique comes in handy, where you can really measure whether the effectiveness of your classroom was because maybe the content was not age appropriate, or it was too high level for the students to access it. The extrinsic way, basically, when you are teaching in an English lesson, if they do not know how to phrase a complex sentence because they haven't learned it well enough in grade 4 or grade 5, then when you're going to give them narrative writing, complex questions would be an extrinsic limitation for them. And these are what we would love to identify in your CFUs. The next thing is the germane, where they retain this information that has been gathered over time and then are able to ramp them up. And that's what we actually prepare them for in the examination halls.
Yeah,
That's the ramping that they do in the examinations, where they are testing how well have they been able to conceptually link the ideas that they have learned over time.
yeah,
So because they knew how to write complex sentences in grade 5, they learned how to write narrative writing and they've become experts. So when we say expert learners, that's because they have a very strong germane ability to be able to conceptually link their skills and knowledge.
Mm.
And we will be talking about that later on once we have completed our Rosenshine's principles. We will be doing sessions on CLT. Anything else, Sister Lina, you would love to add?
No, thank you very much, Rehana. Thanks for that input at the end as well, in linking what we did about cognitive load theory last week
Yeah.
with this week. That's fantastic. Thank you.
If you would like to give us a feedback for today's session, we would love to hear it. We love your voices. That's the whole idea of PulseED being here. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and we will see you next Sunday for one of our Rosenshine strands and principles to be explained, and hopefully more interactive as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.